I'm very happy to check that we have a very good response of the audience that confirms that this topic of agri-food technology and innovation is very convenient for a second dialogue, Spain-Singapore, of this series that we launched the Spanish Embassy and the Spanish-Singaporean Official Chamber of Commerce, whose members I would like to greet, especially its president, Sinue Arroyo. So we face now huge food security challenges, not just because of the crisis of the COVID-19, but also because of structural problems like consumer requirements, population growth, climate change, and environmental degradation. So the lack of local resources is a key element to be considered in Singapore. Singapore is making extra efforts, big efforts for smart, efficient, and productive development of the primary sector and agri-food industry. And Spain and Singapore have already a very strong recent history of collaboration on the agri-food sector. We have more than 600 million Singapore dollars of bilateral trade on agricultural products in the last 5 years, following the Spanish leadership as international provider of agri-food products and innovative partner on sectors such as food and agri-food industry. I would like to just remind that Spain has kept its supply chains during all this crisis. We have been exporting to Singapore and the rest of the world during these months with full normality. So I think it's time for further collaboration on agri-food and agri-food tech, particularly under this COVID-19 situation. And it's good that we engage today in a debate or dialogue on opportunities and challenges across food systems in Spain and Singapore, and going further on how food production and supply in our cities are likely to be organized in the future. So this is why we are very happy to explore these issues with you. And I would like to thank all the people who have organized this event, Gemma Blasco, Laura, Maria Rosa, Adrián de Fedetti, and we look forward to listening to the views of the experts and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Santiago. Thank you very much and for joining and for sharing your thoughts. I fully agree that cooperation will be fundamental and hopefully many opportunities will flourish from this dialogue in the future. As a Spaniard, I believe that Spain can be an ideal solution provider to Singapore at so many levels. So now it's time to introduce myself. My name is Carlos Bonet. I am the Director and General Manager of AM Fresh Asia Office, which is the commercial office of AM Fresh Group, a Spanish company. And together with other Spanish companies, we founded the Spanish Chamber of Commerce last year, believing that the potential of collaboration between companies in such distant and different markets is very important. So the first thing I'd like to do is to really thank the Embassy for organizing this dialogue and to thank the Spanish Chamber of Commerce for honoring me and hosting this event. AM Fresh is a Spanish innovation powerhouse that has been operating for 90 years. We have an end-to-end integrated model operation in table grapes, in citrus, in tropical foods, in superfoods, in plant-based foods, and in flowers. Innovation is at our core, and it's the single most valuable asset that we have as a company. Our main innovation activities are linked and very concentrated in new varieties, especially in table grapes and citrus. The key priority for our breeding programs, especially for those of citrus and grapes, are to be developed. We want to develop these breeding programs, especially in Spain. So our main breeder is called Juan Carreño. He is based in Murcia, Spain, and the breeding is done, most of it in Spain. When we breed these grape varieties, what we try to do is to seek an objective both at the consumer level and at the grower level. So the consumer, there's many ways to improve grapes. We can have better tastes. We can have varieties that have additional health benefits, such as higher antioxidant levels, for example, or higher vitamin content. And for the growers, who are the heroes as well, as we've seen in the COVID situation, we want to also be able to offer them grape varieties that they are able to maybe get more tonnage or more kilos per hectare, and at the same time, maybe ensure some varieties that are naturally disease resistant. Once you're able to supply or to plant disease resistant varieties, the consumers benefit because there are less products sprayed on the fruits, obviously, and at the same time, this is reducing the cost of growers. So our global leading table grape program is currently in 16 countries around the world. We have thousands of hectares licensed in our own farms and also to third parties. And through this, as I was saying, we try to build a very strong value proposition to customers. Innovation as the core. And then through this innovation, we're able to engage more traditional activities like fruit exports or fruit supply to retailers around the globe. What we try to do is to supply customers from our own farms in Spain, mainly, South Africa as well, South America and North America. And at the same time, we have some QC teams present in important sources such as Egypt, Turkey, Morocco, to ensure that we're supplying our retail partners with the product that they need. But this is enough for introducing Gay and Fresh in a nutshell. I'd like to welcome our main speakers for today. So hello, Yiting. Hello, Jorge. Thank you for being here today.
Hello.
Wong Yiting is Acting Director of Food and Consumer Cluster, Agency for Science, Technology and Research, A Star. Also with us is Jorge, as I just mentioned, who is the head of International of AINIA Food Technological Center in Spain. Before we proceed with their presentations, I'd like to just summarize and maybe say a couple of facts that are important to enrich the dialogue today and reinforcing what Mr. Ambassador has already commented. For everyone listening to us, by the way, before I forget, there is a chat option available at the lower part of your screens. So you can click anytime and address us with any questions you might have. We will be answering the questions right after the presentations, at the end part of the presentations. So the first point I'd like to bring up is that Singapore and Spain are obviously two very different countries that have different challenges in agriculture. Singapore is a small island, home to 5.6 million people. As you can imagine, well, actually as a reference for any Spanish person listening to us, Singapore is roughly the size of Menorca, but of course with many more people, many more mouths to feed. And obviously right now it's importing more than 90% of its food. It's a very different situation in Spain. Agriculture in Spain represents 3% of GDP, and the agri-food industry embodies 15% of industrial GDP, the most important sector in the industry. The second point I'd like to raise is that Spain is the first supplier of fruits and vegetables in Europe, and also a global leader supplier with China and US to the world. And the third point would be that if something unites our countries, in particular Spain and Singapore, is the close bilateral trade relationship in agri-food matters, which is roughly yearly around 100 million euro or 150 million Singapore dollars. Of course, there is interest in innovation and R&D that is shared, and I'm sure that there will be many opportunities that will flourish from this dialogue. So, time for our first presentation of the day. Yiting, hello, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining. I think that we're all very eager to understand the challenges that Singapore is going through, and we'd like to hear more about what A Star is doing to tackle them. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you, Carlos, for the kind introduction. Greetings to Mr. Ambassador, and also for our colleagues and friends who are online with us today. It is my pleasure to introduce the topic today from the A Star side of things, and I'd like to have my grateful appreciation to the Embassy of Spain and also the Spanish Chamber of Commerce for inviting me as a speaker and a panel for today's webinar, and very happy to see many faces today, local and also in Spain, I believe. So I would like to maybe share my screen and we can go to the slide back, and I hope that we'll have an engaging session today. Just like to check that everybody is able to see the screen. Is it okay? Yeah. All right, so I think the webinar topic today is very apt into addressing the global crisis that we have, especially in the challenge of food security for many countries, more so for Singapore, which is so small, and we are very dependent upon our import activities and trade connectivity with our neighbors, our regions, and whether on the European side or even from the Asian side of things. So today I'm going to focus very much on what Carlos has mentioned just now. Innovation is the core of many things that we do. So as here at the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, we help to build programs to actually invigorate our industry and our scientists and engineers to come up with competitive solutions that can drive economic output as well as to enrich and improve our lives. So I'll go to the slide today. This is my brief content. Basically, like what we've mentioned just now, Singapore is really very small compared to Spain. We only have 5.6 million in population, but we have very high mobile phone penetration rate. As you can see that most of us have at least 1 or 2 or more mobile phones. And we continue to have what we call a digitalized economy in Singapore. And right now, I think we encourage a lot of the new activities on how we can expand even some of the land usage in Singapore. And some people even joke that Singapore land is actually expanding because of the reclamation activities that we do in the sea coastal area. So the next slide is going to talk about, sorry, I think there may be some issues with the slide transition, is to really introduce my agency, the Agency for Science, Technology, Research. We are actually a public research agency reporting to the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So our mission is simple, but it's a tall order to advance science and develop innovative technology in order to improve our lives and advance economic growth. So A Star is divided into 4 departments or entities, so to speak. We have the Biomedical Research Council, we have the Science and Engineering Council, we have the commercialization arm called A Star Accelerate. We also have an academy to look after talent and capability building through the A Star Graduate Academy. It's like a PhD scholarship program that we want to build for our local citizens. We also welcome foreign talents in our midst. So all in all, in A Star currently, we have about 20 research institutes and technology centers, spanning our staff strength about 5,000 staff, and most of us are either research engineers or technical research staff. And you can say that in A Star itself, we welcome a lot of our foreign scientists and engineers to bring in their expertise and capabilities, all from more than 60 countries represented in one agency. So to understand better the context of today's discussion, I'd like to bring across the pressing issues that Singapore and the global countries are currently facing in terms of the agri-food problems that we face, more so with COVID-19 in our midst today. So in order for us to build a realistic and competitive R&D program in Singapore, we look at the drivers for what we call the Agriculture 4.0. It is a global issues of looking at climate change, environmental pressures, pandemics and diseases, as well as the growing interest of sustainability issues. And this has given rise to things like disruptive technologies, the mantra of how we can grow more with less, right? And the other part of the concern is about urbanization. We have a huge population of people living in the cities these days, and we have the growing middle class citizens who are requiring more nutritional quality food, as well as things like enhancing their lifestyles and things that can bring much more value to their day-to-day living. So consumers are getting a lot more value than what they used to get previously. And all these gives us pressure to actually increase our local food production in order to meet the growing consumption. So from here in Singapore, we recognize the difficult challenges ahead of us. As a small country, we can't do everything. We need to be focused and strategic on what we want to invest in. So recently, what we have seen across the multi-agency engagement from the ministry level to the public sector government level, we are moving in a coordinated fashion to move things faster and to align with our research partners as well as the industry and companies in our midst. So what we want is to achieve food security, what Carlos has actually put in just now as meeting the 30 by 30 nutritional target by the year 2030. And at the same time, we want to achieve sufficient economic growth for our companies and industry to be sustainable. So what we see at the bottom here will be the different public agencies and ministry working hand in hand to bring this target to reality by 2030. We have the Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Energy, Environment and Water Resources. Ministry of National Development, plus the other agency that most of you will be familiar with, like Economic Development Board, Singapore Food Agency, Enterprise Singapore, as well as the Jurong Town Council. So here shows the very vibrant landscape of our food manufacturers in Singapore. So food manufacturing covers about 1% of our GDP currently. We have over, to date, close to about 1,000 small, medium, and large enterprises looking into food manufacturing, flavors and fragrances, as well as ingredient companies. So in this small footprint in Singapore, you can see a lot of these familiar brands that you have, the consumer brands, as well as some of these commodity players. They have set up their presence in Singapore to do not only trading and business, but they're also investing in putting their R&D centers in our midst. So the office that I'm at A Star, at Fusionopolis and Biopolis, is a testament to some of these companies finding this ecosystem in Singapore very conducive for them to collaborate and to work hand in hand in developing new solutions through R&D. So I'll move my slide now to talk about the COVID-19 impact along the food and agri-food supply chain. So from the end-to-end solutions that we hope to tackle the problems that we face, we have to look at, firstly, what are the areas that we could work on together from the farm input, meaning it is from farm to fork kind of solutions that we have to tackle along the supply chain, from farm inputs to the farming activities, to processing and manufacturing, trade and distribution, as well as the end market of retail and food services. So from this farm input, you can see that during the COVID crisis, you may see that countries are moving into the protectionism policy, and farmers may have difficulty in securing quality agrochemicals, and also how they can actually improve on their seeds protection and preservation during this time whereby seeds availability could be affected. In terms of farming, you'll be surprised that even Singapore is a very urbanized country. We do have farming activities in many parts of Singapore, not only in the city area. Of course, you see some greenhouses, some indoor farms that we're trying to build. There are also in the northern corridor of Singapore, we have what we call the Agro Innovation Park that will be developed further to have more advanced indoor precision farming activities. So for farming here, globally, we recognize there is a labor shortage. There is a downtrading of some of these high-end products that we are dependent on. There are also issues with the regional importers and exporters of fresh produce, whereby the farm produce are left in the farm areas that are not picked up because of shortage of labor. And then down the supply chain, we have the manufacturing issues, whereby companies are struggling in order to produce more in such a critical situation, and yet how they can adopt automation in order to have better social distancing measures in their factories. And things like storage capacity now becomes a critical solution for many of these companies who wants to produce more to meet the growing demand, and yet storage becomes a bottleneck. And then next, when we look at trade and distribution, I think Hooker and Carlos will be able to share their expertise in this topic, when we have trade disruptions all over, and where you have the sea freight and air freight restrictions, and this really has an impact of how we can import quality products locally into Singapore. And lastly, I think all of us are impacted by the lockdown and the movement control. And you can see consumers now actually begin to discover the value and the easiness of online purchases, how we can become so dependent about having food delivered right to our doorsteps. And I think most of the consumers now realize the value of even having self-baked products at home, and self-cooking becomes more important. And one of the realization during COVID is consumers are currently actually less brand conscious, because they realize that some of these home brands do make a difference in their day-to-day living. Rather than depending upon export of foreign brands, they now turn to less branded items. They become more conscious of how they consume things to minimize wastage. So these are part and parcel of perhaps the challenges and the good and the not so good impact that we see across the agri-food supply chain due to COVID. I'd like to move on to share with you another exciting story, what we call the Singapore Food Story. It is part of the R&D program that A Star, together with the Singapore Food Agency, has developed this even before COVID. So we can say that this is a new program we just launched in 2019. This is actually part of our effort to support the 30 by 30 food security goal to envelop this with the development of scientific excellence across 3 thematic areas. And the 3 areas that we're looking at today is how we can develop sustainable urban food production, how we can have mindset and capabilities to have advanced protein production through biotechnology innovation, things that alternate proteins become some of our interest area. And underpinning this in the blue box you see is how we can build new capabilities to address some of these food safety gaps along our supply chain, how we can use things like intelligent supply and chain management technologies, how we can better understand consumer behavior, and this becomes part of our R&D program to increase food security, to contribute to economy, and lastly to ensure that we have a continual supply of safe food for Singapore and for our regional partners as well.
So Yiting, excuse me just for intervening very quickly.
Right.
We do have, as you know, a few more presentations. So if we can maybe wrap up in the next 2-3 minutes, so we can present his. Thank you very much. Excuse me.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so in the next slide is just showing you some of the innovation in the agri-tech scene in Singapore, looking at pre-production, production and post-harvest technology. So things like automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, sensors and detection system being integrated into a platform becomes very important to us. And the other new areas that we want to look at is, for example, in shelf life extension technology and in packaging. The other part I'd like to touch on is because I think I heard from Hoker and Carlos about strengthening aquaculture innovation. This is something that Singapore is also looking into quite closely with our regional partners, how we can build better feed formulation, for example, and to have an AI-enabled technology in growing aquaculture on land, for example. Besides just coastal farming, we're looking at even land indoor aquaculture systems. And the next one I'd like to share is really the new food innovation for alternate proteins. It is a growing area for Asia, especially looking at diversifying our protein sources, looking into more sustainable sources per se, whether it is plant-based protein, cultured meat, microbial or fungal protein, as well as a more new areas to look at insect protein itself. We see this as a growing area because customers and consumers are more aware of the sustainability issues, as well as the growing resources around us in the region, looking at the diversity of Asia itself in terms of the crops that are still underutilized in our midst, and how we can bring this together to bring different flavors, textures, as well as more multiple choices for our consumers to actually pick and choose in the near future. And at the same time, we want to encourage our scientists and engineers, as well as the food manufacturers, to come up with innovative formulation and processing technology, so that this food innovation becomes a vibrant market for Asian consumers. So the other food safety science innovation that I mentioned is actually important in order for us to understand the supply chain issues and how we can model some of these supply chain management in a very intelligent way, and how we can use sensor-based IoT system to collect different data points to ensure that all these are being documented and shared across different agencies and industry partners. And the other part I'd like to emphasize about food safety science, the importance of it is that because we have more novelty in what we source in terms of the food, it's more diverse, it's important to understand the nutritional value of food as well as the risk in terms of allergenicity and toxicity of some of these new materials. So this needs a lot of new capabilities to be built in Singapore and in the region. I think I will probably end quite soon to talk about some of the early success stories in Singapore, why it is currently one of the preferred choice in Asia to build up more innovation and investment in food and agri-food. In the last 2 years itself, we have a lot of vibrant startups growing in our midst, as well as new facilities that's being invested by companies to bring up the food technology in Singapore. And this will be my second last slide to look at new areas we could explore together, especially from our Spanish partners, of how we can continue our increasing of local food production agenda, and how we can reduce waste, how we can digitalize some of our food manufacturing solutions, how we can even enhance storage solutions and shelf life of our products, and especially looking at how we can better understand consumer behavior and having the consumer insights to drive innovation. So some messages for our consumers industry today is to really help us to appreciate the technology that we currently have and how we can support our local produce and made in Singapore products, and how we can encourage our fellow citizens to really pursue new and exciting job opportunities, to upgrade their skills, and of course to embrace an entrepreneurial spirit in what they do. So I'd like to really ask the industry partners today to really work hand in hand with our policymakers to ensure fair trade, to develop a co-create innovation in our ecosystem, and to put the health of our workers as a priority, and to welcome transformation in order for all of us to stay relevant and competitive. So that will be the last slide I have today, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, I think. Very interesting presentation, and it's great to see you have such detailed roadmaps for the future of Singapore. So thank you. Jorge, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. Let me check how to share the screen. All right. Okay. Is it okay? Do you see the right screen?
No, not at the moment.
It's coming. It takes a few.
Okay.
I start, of course, thanking the Ambassador of Spain, Mr. Santiago Miralles, Jose Maria Blasco Almudena of the Commercial Office, and Carlos for this kind invitation. I'm very proud to be here. Also to Dr. Yeting Wong, and for the excellent presentation of today, which is, I mean, a brilliant platform to start thinking on how Spain can interact with Singapore in this exciting Agenda 2030, which is the topic of today. I think, as Carlos introduced before, Spain has the capacity to supply and has the capacity to invest also, globally speaking, in different food supply chains. But also we have the capacity to innovate and to cooperate, and this is my field and my offer today. So let's start the presentation. I'm sorry. Oh my God. Well, AINIA is in Spain, in the Technopark of Valencia. We are a private independent association. We work confidentially, and we offer integral solutions bottom up to the companies. So, for instance, the presentation of Dr. Wong is very inspiring because shows a lot of ways to cooperate, because we are doing more or less the same for our customers in Spain. So we can develop together many things. we offer solutions integrated. So we take the problem and we can go from farm to fork. You will see that our activity includes, for instance, a lot of consumer activities, a huge analytical activity, specialized training, international, which is the most disrupted activity this year for known reasons. And we are working normally on a permanent basis of 1,500 clients. Half of them, they are associated to AINIA. We are recently been approved as member of WAITRO, the World Association of Industrial and Technological Research Organizations. Well, we started in '87 working on food, but because of our approach to technologies, we could spread immediately to food packaging, which is something that comes together with the food, is something that you cannot separate. Bioenergy, agro-industry, pharma, cosmetic, and chemistry, thanks to different technologies we are experts in. I focus now on the activity. We make a lot of small projects every year, over 150. In 2018 were 184 small research and development projects, mostly paid by the companies with their own funding or with different schemes of supported funding in Spain. But we have also some of activity allocated into projects with European, national and regional funding. Most of them focused on food and health. To do so, we have, first of all, a good staff of people, more than 200 persons, very well trained, multidisciplinary. Almost 70% of them are graduates and film doctors, and they have to accomplish their goals, their targets. They have 8 laboratories fully equipped and all accredited, 12 pilot plants, representing what we reach, the kind of demands we receive actually today, I'm sorry. And this is in our headquarters with more than 13,000 square meters in Valencia. Some of these pilot plants have grown to be pre-industrial, so we can deliver pre-market batches of products to the companies, basically in microencapsulation and bioproduction. But in the case of industrial extraction with CO2 supercritical, we have a factory. We have a full factory operating, GMP 35. Well, what I like the most is to show what we have been done in terms of cooperation, because today we are here to cooperate, to offer our cooperation. No? And I have selected the cooperation we have done through the CDTI. CDTI stands for the Centro para el Desarrollo Tecnológico Industrial, Industrial and Technological Development Center of Spain. It's an agency that grants and provides loans for the innovation in our industries, and have agreements with many countries to do bilateral projects. So we have done with them, thanks to them, we have done, first of all, we're with India, particularly in Asia. We develop biostimulants for agricultural use with a biotechnological company in Valencia and another in India. We developed new packaging for the sale of fresh fish in the supermarket, which was quite challenging because, you know, the fish is not very easy to handle in a package. So we developed skin packaging for the supermarkets, and with a Norwegian institute. We developed a very interesting set of plastics to reduce the post-harvest losses in Egypt that were incredible. We're more than you can afford. I mean, millions of tons spoiled because the mycotoxins, the rats and birds and so. It was also a project between Spain and Egypt with 2 companies. We developed, it was a quite successful project recently ended up with Japan to develop food packaging with new barrier properties, but at the same time easy to recycle, which was something not that easy because the polymers that are used to create the barrier to the oxygen and then to protect the food normally are not degradable. No? So this was, it has been finished recently, and we are very proud of this project. Last, we did a project with Argentina, developing ingredients with satiation and cardio-healthy effect in baby food. And this is very interesting because it enhances one of the better qualities of these bilateral projects. Each one is working with his own legislation, his own currency. So we are completely free about changes in the monetary market and whatsoever. No? So this is a property that makes very interesting the bilateral projects for us. The last example I take is a recently started project with Taiwan. The target, the challenge is very similar to that in Japan, but in this case for salads. In Taiwan, they used to eat very frequently salads and mix of salad, vegetables, and meat or fish. And the challenge to protect that with a special packaging is what we are facing right now. And I'm sorry. Last, a very lucky news is that today has been announced the second Eureka Global Stars with Singapore call, which is a scheme for bilateral projects. I put the link there for your information. Of course, the CDTI people in Singapore and in India will inform you extensively on that. And take note, because an information webinar will take place in June, in the 25th of June, in a few weeks. So I think it's a good opportunity to get information on that and to create partnerships between companies of Spain and companies of Singapore to face one of the challenges you have exposed, Dr. Wong, in your presentation. So that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jorge. It's really great to see you're doing so many initiatives, and there's a lot of possibilities for cooperation, as you were mentioning. So again, thank you very much for your presentation. It's now time to introduce our two startups that will also present today. One from Singapore and one from Spain. So first of all is Mr. Adrian Teo from DIMUTO, and followed by him will be Inés Sagrario from EKOMOKE. Okay. So our first presentation, Adrian is the COO of DIMUTO, a Singaporean startup. And actually, Adrian, I must confess that when I was doing my homework and reading about what you do, I can relate very much as a fruit exporter to the solution you're providing. So please explain a bit more about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Carlos. I'm just going to share my screen right away.
Please.
And just give me a quick thumbs up if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So yeah, thanks so much, Carlos. Thank you so much, Ambassador and fellow colleagues here. I'm very honored to actually be on this panel to sort of give you an understanding of what we've done. So DIMUTO is really, we started this company only early last year. And what we're really looking at is to demystify the global food trade as well. So I'm happy to take you through this, information. And explaining, first of all, we need to start from what the problem is, right? So just now we heard, Dr. Yi from A Star really explained about, how there's this lack also of a disconnect within the entire supply chain that causes a lot of problem. Many of us think that, the whole global food trade is well connected, but that's really a misconception. In actual fact, and I'm sure all of us know here, it's, the global food trade is a highly fragmented and disconnected place. And as a result of that, they're also digitally fragmented and disconnected, right? The implications on global food trade is massive. And, we talk about social issues like global food loss and waste. Just to put a number to it, it's about $1 trillion worth of market loss that we're looking at. In terms of other sort of commercial as well as market issues, trade disputes, right? Traders face close to 5 to 10% of loss per trade, right? And as well as SMEs, the Asian Development Bank actually came up with a report that showed that, SMEs actually, there is a trade finance gap of about $1.5 trillion. They don't have access to actually finance their trades. And then also at a consumer level, right, there is a tremendous lack of understanding of where your food came from. right? So we facilitate, DIMUTO, we facilitate trades. We've done, Spanish blueberries into Singapore before, but question, and many times, a lot of them says they're organic. But as a consumer, how do you actually know that this, blueberries are truly organic or not, right? So the provenance or the originality of these products are oftentimes not told to us as well. And then also there's a lack of consumer engagement. We don't really know what consumers are really thinking about. And of course, these problems are further, made worse by the issues of COVID-19, which I think we're all very well aware of. And so where DIMUTO really comes into this picture is we believe that trade digitalization is the key. And we have done it from farm all the way down to the consumer level. And we do it, by using technologies like IoT devices, blockchain, artificial intelligence, as well as cloud computing, and tie it all together to be able to create the digital assets throughout the entire supply chain. And I'll be happy to share with you more. As a result of our ability to actually provide these solutions to our customers, we've been able to identify where food waste is happening along the supply chain. For example, here, improper cold storage practices. And using our solution as well, we've been able to empower suppliers with the ability to gain trade financing so that now they can actually fuel their growth into and expand their business as well. So the way we do it, and our solution, I'll quickly articulate this, right? We target, we target the packing and repacking facilities, and this is where we would digitize those products, okay? And the way we do it is actually by affixing a QR code, which serves as a digital identity for the fruit as well as the carton box. And then we have a proprietary device that we implement in those packing and repacking facilities to digitize those assets. So let me show you a video of how we do it. This is a very typical processing and packing facility. This is a device that we've implemented in Mexico. On the left, what you see in the video here is a labeling machine. What we do is we provide the QR codes to them and they put it into the reel or cartridge, and it's automatically labeling every single avocado with a QR code. Then what happens next is we actually have a device that we put over their existing conveyor systems. So there's no change in the workflows. And essentially this device is scanning the QR code of the carton box and capturing an image of every single carton box that's passing through that gantry, and thereby digitizing every single carton box and fruit. So the analogy we love to give is we're actually generating driver's license of every single carton box. So that's the comparison here. Now, then once this digitization has happened upstream, we're able to then sort of visualize this and share this with the traders who are involved in the trade itself. We provide information about the avocado. For example, just now what you saw, the digitized images of those avocado. What you see here in every box, you get to see the carton number, you get to understand what's the SKU, you know which pack plant it's from, and that's very important because now it tells you which farm or recta it's from. And what you get to see is not just a document that tells you a purchase order of the fruit, but you get to see down to the carton and the fruit itself, right? So that's the enhanced visibility we get to see as traders here. And then at the retailer side, what happens here as you receive the products, you get to use our free mobile application to scan that QR code to say that you have received the goods. You're able to provide feedback, and this will assist you in accurately reporting defects as well as disputes to a supplier. And then last but not least, I think this is where the sort of the holy grail is, talking about the consumer side. The same QR code that we use for traceability and digitizing the entire trade can also be used to actually be able to continue this engagement with the consumer. So the whole customer journey continues just using this QR code. And what we're able to present here is product information, information about the farm, certain certificates, your organic certificate, your rainforest and lion certificates. These things can actually be put onto our product page as well. So with our system, we've been able to implement into 7 countries, and we're slowly expanding into Europe, Netherlands, Spain, definitely a place that we're looking at, South Africa and Latin America as well. So we cut across all types of food categories, and we're looking into meats as well as seafood at the same time. So the benefits are very tangible. I think, I've given you some examples in terms of food loss, how we've been able to identify that, etc. But more so within every stakeholders within the supply chain has seen reduced losses as well as value that's been unlocked because of the visibility that's been created in the trade itself. Now, this is my last slide, and the question is, what's next for us? For us, what we've done, first of all, is to digitalize the entire trade using our system and our way to actually digitize the assets using IoT. Then we've been able to systemize all this information, and organize it using blockchain as well as the cloud computing. And next step for us is really to capitalize on data. data is king and everybody knows that, right? And what we're trying to look here is to use AI to generate actionable insights, of the supply chain itself. And then so as to provide seamless access to insurance, financing, and even marketplace as well. And all this, what we're trying to do here is really create a global food supply chain that is both efficient as well as resilient. So I thank you very much for this opportunity to present to all of you here. I'm really honored to do that. You can go ahead and reach out to us. You can find out more information on the DIMUTO website, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to take this conversation further. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you. I think it's a privilege really to have, in a data-driven world, to have data in this industry that maybe has been lagging a bit behind. I think it's bringing a lot of transparency and confidence, which is a great thing. So thank you very much for your presentation. Hello, Ines. Ines is the CEO of EKOMOKE, a Spanish startup, and she will be presenting a beautiful initiative that she has been developing with her cousin in an attempt to follow their grandparents' farming tradition, but in a very different way, with sustainability at the core. So hello, Ines.
Hi, good afternoon to everybody over in Singapore. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you to the organizing institutions. And thank you to the fellow panelists. I've learned a lot from your presentations. Let me just go straight into it because I know we're very short on time. So I'd like to talk to you about EKOMOKE. It's a consumer-centric, sustainable agtech startup. And we were really born to reinvent food value chains so that they can be shorter, more flexible, and local. So we bring you fresh greens grown locally, but really everywhere. And I guess this is very in line with Singapore's 30 by 30 program that Dr. Yiting was presenting. Why do we need to reinvent food value chains? I think the fellow presenters have been touching upon some of these reasons. From Singapore's point of view, it might be more to effectively buffer supply chain disruptions, but for us, it's very linked to the climate emergency and the fact that it's not going to get any better. So today, Spain is an agricultural powerhouse, and we basically feed with our fruits and vegetables all of Europe and beyond. But as summers start getting longer and longer, and we get into 6-month-long summers in the southern half of Spain, at least over the next decade, we believe that the future of most of the agriculture will be indoor. Okay, and we do think that the future of food value chains is really changing from this producing in one place and taking out container loads all over Europe or all over the world. That's probably going to be changing, and what we're going to be developing is the knowledge to grow that anywhere else. And it's that knowledge that would travel instead of the lettuces in our case, or other food stuff that is now traveling hundreds and mostly thousands of kilometers. So what is our contribution to this? Well, we have developed our own tech-controlled 3D growing. It allows us to bring high-tech or high-yield agriculture closer to the cities so that we really reduce the food miles of what we're growing. We've also developed our own circular economy biofertilizer, which significantly impacts the taste of our produce. And we have a dedicated R&D team that is really just keeping an eye on tomorrow's knowledge, tomorrow's innovations, making sure that we're always 2 steps ahead and thinking what are the new needs and how can we help address them. Growing in a controlled environment allows us to avoid pests completely. So since we also have a biofertilizer, we don't use chemicals at all. And as many other hydroponic indoor farms, we have a very efficient use of water. Our star product today are these live leafy green mini gardens. And this is our main differential attribute, which is the fact that the produce is live. what are consumers looking for today? They're looking for taste, and a lot of the produce that we consume in our day-to-day has lost most of that taste. Our biofertilizer is the one that helps us bring that taste back. And also they want healthy products, okay? And here, making sure that you harvest the food that you're gonna consume immediately allows for all the nutrients to be packed inside that lettuce, instead of being cut 3 weeks ago, put into a plastic bag with controlled atmosphere that sort of kills everything that was once there. We also make sure that it is locally grown with our sustainable agrotechnology. And this allows us, one, to have year-round production, which is something that consumers want. They don't want to stop eating lettuce sometimes in the year. They want to eat those lettuce years round, but we reduce significantly the food miles, and we don't use any chemicals, as I was saying. Reducing the food miles is something that consumers are more and more concerned about. And in fact, today I saw news of a restaurant chain in the eastern coast of the US that is introducing the carbon footprint on the menu of their restaurants. So saying, what's the carbon footprint of the salad that you're gonna be consuming? This is a restaurant chain called Just Salads. We recognize that consumers want convenience, and that's why those salad mixes in a plastic bag have been so successful, and they've been growing a lot, at least in Spain over the past 10 years. But we want to make sure that we can guarantee zero waste, okay? So this is very easy to use. You just cut it. If you want, you can wash it to take off any dust that may have accumulated, but nothing else. And if you don't finish it, it can last up to 2 weeks on your kitchen counter, just adding a little bit of water to it, okay? So you reduce completely the food waste associated to the ready-to-eat salad mixes. And also we avoid single-use plastic, and all the packaging that we use is 100% compostable, okay? Just to wrap up, I want to just present the rest of the team. I'm the one that usually does the talking, but the real brains in this project is the team doing the operations and the production, Ana and Juan, as well as our dedicated R&D team, Javier and Antonio, that are always thinking about tomorrow's challenges. And then just finally, if you would like to get to know us a little bit more, here are my contact details. I'll be more than happy to share with you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ines, very much. I think you're ticking so many boxes, right? Growing without plastic, locally sourced, minimizing food waste. It's really a great project. So thank you for sharing. So, okay, we're not doing great in time because it's 5 to 6, but we're allowed to finish by 6:15. So I'm gonna ask the panel to have a 10-minute discussion, and then we're gonna have a 10-minute Q&A to finish by 6:15 sharp, okay? So the first point I'm gonna address, and I think maybe Yiting, you would be the ideal person to start off with this topic, would be that Singapore has obviously built a very strong ecosystem. It's an innovation hub that is obviously very, very well tied up. Could Singapore be a role model globally in this aspect? And do you think this model is exportable to other countries?
That's a very practical question to ask, Carlos. I think because Singapore is small in many ways, we are very easily connected in terms of who our partners are. For example, in the small footprint of the university, the research institute, and even the companies are coexisting in that place, it's very easy for us to co-create things together very quickly, to prototype, to do a pre-pilot to pilot scale of things. And from there, we can actually have very easy models for companies to scale out and to export to the regional countries, for example. But what I would like to share is that because we are small, we can do things quickly. And with the whole of government approach to doing things in terms of licensing, understanding the regulatory hurdles behind it, I think it gives us an added advantage of how we can help the countries around us to also likewise adopt some of these solutions faster and better. And the other thing I would like to emphasize is that talent. We welcome a lot of diversification of our talent right here. So that's why we can learn things quickly and to run it with our partners. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Jorge, would you like to say anything about this topic?
No, not particularly, because I mean, she's talking about Singapore, so I fully agree with his words. This situation has changed the mind of everybody. If we talk about how the COVID impacted on the food sector, I mean, we can say we have two times very clear, no? During the crisis itself, when it started heavily in March, the industry focused to keep the food supply to the supermarkets, and they were very efficient. I mean, it's said by a survey that in Spain, 98% of the consumers found what they wanted to find in a supermarket from the very beginning. So there was no disruption in the supply. They have integrated much more the supply chain between the different suppliers of the business very quickly. So they have diverted the service to the food service, hotels, restaurants, bars, and so that were closed to the retailers. But what is said now is we are waiting to see how this will impact in the long term. So after the health crisis will come economical crisis. Everybody is waiting that, right? How will impact this? We have a reference, which is the last financial crisis 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. What happened at that time is that the people was more keen to buy cheaper products, less sophisticated, of course, keeping the safety, but I mean, more simpler. Now we expect to have an increase in products with some health claims. Good for the immunity system and so on, right? But so changes will arrive. But to be honest, we are just waiting. We are asking all the time the companies and the managers what they will do. But everybody has focused for the last 2 months basically to be efficient, and they succeed.
Yeah. That's a very good point, Jorge. Actually, for ourselves, no, we are a very large grower of citrus in Spain, and with everything that has happened with COVID, it's remarkable how supply chain has responded, no, in such short time to this increased demand and to always have fruit at the store. It's really a remarkable story. So I really agree with you.
Today I was attending a discussion between two companies, and they agree that this happened because they were ready. They were really prepared to react. I mean, it was not by chance or by luck. It was because the industry in Spain is very efficient. It's very performant.
Yep. Thank you, Jorge. Yiting, what are your thoughts about the effects of COVID into innovation? Do you think it has changed the list of priorities in some way?
In some ways, yes and no, because we've been preparing, for all these epidemics and pandemics all these years, from the SARS and the various pandemics already. So, like for example, the Singapore Food Story Program already been in discussion in the last 5 years, and it was rolled out even before COVID. So it's just that the way of how we intensify some of the research efforts may have changed. And things that we have been taking our time to develop slowly, and now I think we have to rapidly co-create with our industry partners in order to bring commercialization solutions faster to the market. So it's really the speed of things right now, and also the depth of things in terms of new areas to look will be things like cold storage solutions, warehousing, sustainability issue has become very real to us in Singapore. So these are the things that will keep going at a rapid pace.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Another topic I'd like to raise for this panel is, what about the opportunities for cooperation? In what areas do you believe, now after seeing what we've seen today in the presentations, that Spain and Singapore can collaborate further, that would benefit both countries in addressing all these challenges that, to some extent they are different, as we were saying at the beginning, just because obviously the countries are very different themselves. But in essence and in spirit, I think there's a lot of things that we can collaborate and agree upon.
Yeah, I think the issues of food security is a reality for both countries. And the fact that we share the love of food and some of these cultural similarities, that we are almost in the tropical kind of season, equatorial, I think we can share some of these or pain points or some of these cultural similarities, and that actually will enhance the chemistry of the collaboration more in terms of understanding the supply chain, understanding the flavors and textures that the Spanish would enjoy, as well as the Asian palate as well. So I think this is a common ground that we could start off with. I think supply chain is what we discussed is an important issue, and digitalization across our industry will be something of concern that we need to bring up.
If I say something, in fact, this crisis has accelerated something that was also happening, right? So the concern on the circular economy, reduction of waste, food waste, the accent on the local producers. I mean, the example of EKOMOKE is a brilliant example of how almost every good company has room in the food sector. I mean, we have a huge food sector, but still 80% of our companies have less than 10 workers, right? And one of the effects of the COVID-19 has been the turn to the local retailers, I'm sorry, the more near retailers and the local producers. So tools like what Adrian Theo explained, DIMUTO, this brilliant traceability tool, will help to have a better control on the stocks and the supply, which is, I mean, one of the things that was raised today among the managers was the situation of crisis awareness has arrived to stay. No? So they will have the mode of crisis on all the time. I mean, waiting. What is the next challenge, right? So many things just will accelerate because of the COVID-19. And the cooperation, of course, we have a very rich gastronomy, which is different from Asian gastronomy, but still the cultural approach of how we understand eating is so similar to the Asian culture that we have a lot of things to share, a lot.
You're absolutely right. I believe that. No, I've been here for almost 8 years, and I've always seen similarities in the way of eating and enjoying, you know, a nice meal. It's very similar, no, between Asia and Spain. So that's a very good point.
I just have to share that we are very humbled to want to learn from an agricultural country like Spain in order to really understand from traditional farming to high-tech and indoor farming, that what Ines has showed just now. How do we bring extra value to the crops and vegetation that we grow in an urban environment? I think that's very important. Yeah,
exactly. I think that there's definitely a priority now in most countries, which is building city resilience, right? We've seen how we can't always depend on imports from abroad. Now we have to make cities be resilient. So urban farming, vertical farming will play such an essential role in these developments going forward. So yeah, the initiative of EKOMOKE, as I've told Ines before, I think is brilliant. Okay, so we have now 10 minutes for the Q&A. Let me check the chat to see if we have any questions. If not, please feel free to do one to anyone who's listening. If not, I have a question for the startups. Okay, we don't have one at the moment. People are shy at the beginning, this always happens. So let me address the startups with a question. I'd like to ask how important international expansion is to your business, because you've obviously proved that you're bringing a solution to Spain or Singapore in both cases, but how important is it that it can be exported and used globally? I know you've touched a bit upon it in your presentations, but if you could build a bit further. Either of you can start.
I would like to say ladies first, but
okay, fine. No, I think in our case, as I was saying, I mean, we do believe that this is not a solution only for Madrid. We have a very ambitious plan to really be able to replicate our grow room model with all the knowledge that goes into it everywhere and anywhere. Obviously, we probably will try first nearby, but I'd be more than happy to see EKOMOKE's knowledge setting up in Singapore in the short term.
Yeah, and from DIMUTO standpoint, yeah, taking this solution global is absolutely where we need to go towards too, because we all know that the food supply chain is globally connected. That's something that it's very tightly knitted in that sense. So we're really all part of this international fabric, if you will. And that's precisely why we've developed our solutions primarily to target upstream players. We got many questions before. Why are you doing across so many different types of fruit types? Why not just focus on one and stay in a particular country or region? And the truth of the matter is, if you look at apples, certain times of the year, it's grown in the northern hemisphere, certain times of the year it's grown in the south. There's so many types of varieties out there. And so to ensure that we are able to then have visibility of the global food supply chain, the global food trade, we really have to take this international and be able to establish digitalization solutions in all those countries as well. And thankfully, I think we've gained quite good traction. I think traders and stakeholders within a food supply chain really do realize that this lack of visibility is really causing them a lot of problems, a lot of trade disputes, a lot of losses, which can easily be solved if they digitize their assets right from the start.
Perfect. Thank you, Adrian. Okay, we have 3 questions actually. Thank you guys for asking them. The first one is from ATQ. Thank you, ATQ. It's to Ines. And can you elaborate on your focus on B2B and or B2C? Okay,
well, if you had asked me this 3 months ago, it would have been only B2B. So we were planning on addressing, or we've been working mainly with restaurants in Madrid, but also starting to speak with supermarkets to be able to get our mini gardens to the final consumer through them. But in the middle of this, we got COVID and we were stuck with no restaurants. So we actually opened an e-commerce within our webpage and started to sell to final consumers. And it's been a really interesting experience. Most of the delivery systems existing were completely collapsed. So I actually went out and delivered the mini gardens myself. And I learned a lot in the process. But in order to be able to scale adequately and make sure that we can get all our produce to consumers, it will be B2B, mainly restaurants and fruit shops or markets and supermarkets.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ines. Since the second question is also for you, let me skip to the third one. And if we have time, we'll ask the second one as well, okay? Because the third one is to Dr. Wong. Will Singapore be more successful on the challenging objectives of 30 by 30 through the pure agri-tech innovation or through food tech?
Okay, that's a good question. Like from the Singapore food story point of view, we actually invest in both, in agri-tech, in aquaculture technology, as well as in food tech, what you have seen in the food innovation and future food. So we are actually putting investment in 2 parts. One is addressing the local production issue of agri-tech aquaculture that is important to increase our local food resilience, so to speak. And the other part of the food technology, whereby the manufacturers and co-innovators of food co-innovation comes in, is actually to address the needs of the growing industry in terms of addressing the consumer needs of healthier, nutritional food, as well as more sustainable food. So that one will go hand in hand in order to meet the 30 by 30 nutritional target. Which one will actually go above each other, we still do not know, but it has to go hand in hand, and we need to co-develop this rapidly in the next 10 to 15 years or so. Yeah, it will take some time for the food tech to catch up, but agri-tech and aquaculture is something that is already in our local ecosystem. We are already ramping up the production and the technology adoption approach to this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Yiting. And thank you, Jose Maria, for the question. Okay, let me go back to question 2 then. Paula Alvarez is asking to EKOMOKE, when will we have your products in the market? Which is the hardest difficulty you have found to scale your product?
Well, the when is really easy. It's already in the market. So if you are in Madrid, then you can go into our webpage and ask to try our mini gardens. So we'll be happy to take it to your house for now. And in terms of the difficulties, I don't have enough time to go through that. We started the project 4 years ago, and you know, it's the trial and error, and also I think the sort of overcoming all the production issues that we faced. Also, last summer we had a big issue with the long and early summer, which we had 30 plus degrees in Madrid already in March. So in the greenhouse that we were growing in, so we had to pivot completely, also with the help of Eatable Adventures, an accelerator here in Madrid. And now the difficulty has been finding the funds to make this grow, but we actually last week finished securing that. So there's a lot of difficulties, but I think if you're perseverant, you can succeed.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ines. Okay, we have a last question. Let me read it out. We have a couple minutes left only, so apologies. I represent a startup which provides insights related to consumer trends in food and beverages. While it's usual to look into food innovation and new products, we believe insights are important to come to the right products. How important do food innovators find insights in order to decide on the right products to innovate? Anyone can take this one.
I agree absolutely with this question in the sense that we have implemented this years ago. So any innovation starts with the insights in the market. So before we were checking the success of the innovation at the end with the consumers to realize that most of the time they don't like. So you start with the insights, you start with the market, you start with the potential consumers, and then you start everything, all this machinery of innovation. I don't know, Dr. Wong, if you agree.
Yes, I totally agree with Hawker. It's like it starts with understanding consumer perception, behavior, and acceptance before you even start developing your product that will be marketable. So it goes through a cycle. So after you have launched the product, you do post-market surveillance, post-market survey as well. So it comes back ultimately to the consumer itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree. For innovation, I think you listen to the consumer, then you put it back into innovation to provide a solution, right? So I think it's a very, very important thing to address. So thank you for the question. And this brings us to 6:15, slightly over the time that we were going to finish, but it's been a very, very interesting discussion. So I'd like to thank all the participants, all the speakers, and especially the Spanish Embassy and the Chamber of Commerce. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And our contact details will be shared, so you can contact us if you'd like. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
everybody.
Carlos and team. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.